Dana Ireland, and she was 23 years old and lived in Pune with her parents, left their house in the afternoon of Christmas Eve, 1991, and never came back. People called 911 when they saw her broken bicycle, shoe, and clumps of hair. Dana wasn't there, though. The study took many years, and even though there was a trial and a verdict, the case is still open. In this case, the way DNA testing methods have changed over time was very important. The story of Dana Ireland is probably the most well-known case in Hawaii's history. On December 12, 1968, Dana Marie Ireland was born in Fairfax County, Virginia, USA, at Fort Belvoir. She was the youngest of John Ireland and Mary Louise Crank's daughters. She was 7 years younger than her sister Sandra. Dana was 23 years old when she went to Hawaii with her parents to see her sister, who lived there. In the afternoon of December 24th, she rode her sister's bike. Later, people found her bike, shoe, and a clump of hair on the side of the road. But Dana was not there. From the way Dana's bike looked, it was clear that a car hit him. The impact was so hard that both wheels and the steering wheel were bent, and the seat was completely ripped out. We were wrong to think that the person who hit Dana would take her to the hospital instead of leaving her to die. The truth was a lot scarier than anyone could have expected. Dana was found 5 miles away from where her bike was found. She was badly hurt all over her body and head, and she was naked below the waist. So, it's safe to say that someone didn't just hit her with a car, but also used her weakness against her. Nurse Jerry Gallagher has bad dreams. She can't get rid of the image of Christmas Eve, 1991, when she was led to Dana Ireland from a spot on a fishing trail by the sea in Wawa. Gallagher and her husband Randy lived on Saddlewick Road, which was a rough, unpaved road that went into the bush along the coast 25 miles southeast of Hilo. At 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve 1991, a friend named Brian knocked on their door to call Gallagher, who was a registered nurse. He wore a Christmas hat with lights that flashed, but he wasn't in a happy mood. He drove her to where Dana was lying, which was a mile from Gallagher's house. Dana was naked below the waist, and the insides of her legs were covered with marks. Gallagher remembers that he tried to help the young woman who was hurt. She bandaged her cuts with the help of a first aid kit. The back of her head was where she was hurt the most. When she asked the woman her name, she seemed to say that it was Easlyn. Gallagher asked Dana who hurt her, but she didn't make sense. Easlyn said, "Please give me the keys so I can drive home." Gallagher kept trying to wake her up. More than 2 hours after the girl was hit by a car, an ambulance showed up. Because there were no phones in the area, it took a long time to get help. The police and fire department's medical staff were busy with other cases, but they also caused a 34-minute delay by making mistakes. When the dispatcher got the call about the young woman who had been hurt, she gave the wrong address of where they could find Dana. This cost them important time. "I thought 1,000,000 times about taking her down to the hospital in my car, but I was so concerned about paralyzing her," Gallagher says. "I've had nightmares about it. None of us knew that it was going to take so long. It took an indescribably long time to get help down to her. If they had got help to her, she would have lived." At 7:56 p.m., Dana Ireland arrived at Hilo Hospital in an ambulance. At this time, John and Mary Ireland were already looking for their daughter, whose broken bicycle was lying on the side of the road. They heard that a hurt woman had been found about 5 miles away. They didn't know, though, that this woman was Dana. Mary said, "We thought someone had hit her and taken her to the hospital." John told Mary and Sandra, his oldest daughter, to go to the hospital while he stayed near Dana's bike. Dana's mother and older sister were already at the hospital when the paramedics brought her there. Doctors tried for 4.5 hours to save Dana's life, but they were not successful. At 12:25 a.m., it was said that she was dead. The stated cause of death was blood loss, which was caused by severe trauma to the head, pelvis, and abdomen. These injuries were caused by a car accident. The next morning, Dana's family went home and turned on the radio. They thought a car hit their daughter, but they heard on the radio that Dana didn't die by accident. When John talked to a local police officer, the officer didn't tell him that Dana had been hit by a car and that someone had taken advantage of her afterward. He had asked a captain of police if the attack was planned. The lieutenant told him, "You are just hearing rumors." Her family was shocked by Dana's death. Their lives will never be the same after she died. But they would find out later that they would have to spend many years looking for suspects and putting them on trial. Local newspapers said that the probe started by the police was intense. The cops found the criminal's t-shirt at the scene of the crime. Then, when Dana was brought to the hospital, she was laying on a sheet that had traces of semen on it. This sheet was taken as evidence by the police. Dana's body also had sperm on it. Also, a bite mark on her body could have been a sign because it looked like the person who attacked her left their teeth behind. So, the police had a sample of the criminal's DNA to use in their investigation. It was 1991, though. It didn't help much with the probe. The tire tracks where they found Dana's bike were another possible clue. Investigators talked to people in the neighborhood to see if anyone saw Dana get hit by a car, but no one saw this happen. Or maybe they didn't say anything for some reason. The area where the bike was found and where Dana was found was not crowded with people. Instead, it was a remote area with a bad road where cars didn't go very often. The investigation has hit a dead end because there are no more clues or witnesses to help find the criminal. A reward was offered to anyone with knowledge about the case, and the amount grew over time. But there was still no progress in the case. In May 1994, John Gonsalves called the police in Hawaii County. Gonsalves was involved in a high-profile case about illegal drugs, but he got off with a suspended sentence even though he could have spent decades in jail. Reason: he told the cops that his half-brother, Frank Paulina, had important information about the Dana Ireland case. Paulina said that the attack on Dana was done by Albert Ian Schweitzer and Sean Schweitzer, who are brothers. The Schweitzer family and the Pauline family lived next door to each other, but they didn't get along. Frank Pauline said he was there when the Schweitzers struck Dana. He told the cops that they ran over Dana Ireland, put her in the trunk, and took her somewhere else. So, Albert Schweitzer, Sean Schweitzer, and Frank Pauline were the key people the police looked at. After those words, a series of 30 years' worth of events happened. So, let's learn more about Frank Pauline to figure out who he is. Frank Raymond Pauline Jr. was born in Fremont, California, on April 27, 1973. He is the son of Frank Pauline Sr. and Patricia Pauline. When Dana Ireland was attacked, Pauline lived in Puna, which was just a few miles from where they found her. Frank already had 3 boys by the time he was 20. At age 9, he got into his first trouble with the cops. He was caught in a break-in on February 8, 1983. On your screen, you can see his whole score up until he turned 18. As he got older, the crimes he did became more serious. A little over 2 years after Dana died, in February 1994, he was given a 10-year sentence for abuse and robbery. Even though these charges had nothing to do with Dana Ireland, they showed that Frank Pauline won't stop being a thief. At his sentencing hearing, authorities called him a walking crime wave because he had done so many crimes. Pauline lived up to his new name after the meeting. He left the courtroom before he was arrested and taken to jail to start his sentence. He was a wanted man, so he was caught in Honolulu a few days later. 3 months after Pauline got a 10-year sentence, his brother John Gonsalves called the police and told them that Frank knew something about the Dana Ireland case. Pauline and Gonsalves agreed that telling the police about the Ireland case would help Pauline not go to jail and Gonsalves get out of jail sooner. The stepbrothers were, of course, not the best people to get information from. And yet, after John Gonsalves talked to detectives about drugs, the case against him was dropped. In the end, he only got a term that was put on hold. After Pauline said he knew something about the Dana Ireland case, detectives from Big Island went to Honolulu, where Pauline was being held, to talk to him. During the 90 minutes of questioning, they asked for information about the day Dana was attacked. Since he said he was there when the attack happened, they took him back to the Big Island. There, he told detectives how the crime happened and showed them the places he had named. Paulina told police that Albert Ian and Sean Schweitzers picked her up at his house on December 24, 1991, in a purple Volkswagen Beetle. He said that Ian Schweitzer was driving. Before they saw a woman standing on the side of the road, the three men stopped to do drugs. We came out at a crossroads on our way to Kapoho, where we saw a girl standing up. My friend Ian looked to the side as we went by and said, "Oh, look at that girl." After that, we kept going down the road. Pauline said that Ian wanted to talk to the woman, so they turned around. They were going about 40-45 min/ph back when Ian Schweitzer, who was driving, couldn't stop in time and hit Dana Ireland. Like he said, the Schweitzers got out of the car, put her in the trunk, and kept going. They stopped after a few miles and helped Dana out of the car. She wasn't dead. Pauline said that he didn't get close to the subject like the Schweitzer brothers did. Even so, he still said something that had very bad results. He said that Ian Schweitzer told him to find a tire iron and hit the woman on the head with it to stop her pain. They supposedly got back in the car and drove away after that. All of the things he said were written down, and Pauline signed a statement that said he did so of his own free will. No one pushed him to do it or gave him any promises, and he wasn't high on drugs or drunk. Pauline was moved to the Maui Community Correctional Center for his own safety after he started helping the cops. The people in charge of his jail said he was a problem and that other inmates had threatened him. Frank Pauline changed his story in July 1996, just over 2 years after Gonsalves told the police what happened. He said he made it up because his stepbrother asked him to help him stay out of jail. He said that he wasn't there when the attack happened, but that he knew who was behind it. He said that he only told them he was there because he thought that was the only way they would believe him. Pauline told me, but lying wasn't one of the things they accused him of on July 30th, 1997. He was accused of killing Dana Ireland because he admitted in a statement that he hit her on the head with a tire iron. Later that year, charges were also brought against the Schweitzer brothers. They said they had nothing to do with the case and were with their families on December 24th, 1991. It's important to note that the police had a reason to think Pauline lied when he said he and the Schweitzer brothers did the crime. Even when detectives took him to the Big Island, he couldn't show them where they hit Dana or where they later found her. Still, Pauline signed the statement, which led to him being charged. When he realized that his stepbrother was wrong when he said that the only thing he could be accused of was lying, he took back what he had said. Gonsalves, on the other hand, stuck to the plan. So, the cops dropped the main charge against him, which was conspiracy to sell drugs. At the hearing, he spoke against his half-brother Frank Pauline. Back then, technology for checking DNA wasn't as good as it is now. Shortly after Pauline and the Schweitzer brothers were arrested, the police took their DNA. The Hawaii County Prosecutor's Office also looked at fluids from the bedsheet used to take Dana Ireland to the hospital and swabs from her body. But the cops were surprised to hear that Frank Pauline, the Schweitzer brothers, and their DNA did not match the DNA of the criminal. Because of this, the charges against these three guys were dropped. But that didn't stop the police from going forward with their case. They just said that this must be done by someone else. Also, there was no other proof that pointed to these three men. Investigators think a bite mark on the victim's chest was made by a bite from the Schweitzer brothers or Pauline, but their teeth prints did not match the mark. Dana Ireland's blood or hair were not found in Albert Ian Schweitzer's Volkswagen, which he bought only a month after she died. Events may have gone in a different direction because of pressure from the Ireland family, the public, and the press. When Dana Ireland died, Albert Ian Schweitzer was 20 years old. The only things on his crime record were traffic violations, like refusing to stop when told to and racing on the road. When Dana died, Sean Schweitzer was 16 years old. Sean was already 23 years old when the brothers were charged in the Ireland case. At the same time, the cops also charged him with fourth-degree assault for touching a girl in a way that wasn't right. For the second case, he was given 180 days in jail and a year of probation. The girl was 15 when the event happened, and Sean was 16 at the time. So even though the DNA test came back negative, all three of the people suspected of killing Dana Ireland broke the law at some time. It didn't help clear their names, of course. Investigators went to the Schweitzer family home 5 days after Frank Pauline gave his first statement to the police. They used Ian's Volkswagen Beetle from 1957 as proof. Even though they knew Frank Pauline, both brothers told the cops that they were not with him. On Christmas Eve, Sean said he was at home and Ian said he was either at home or at his uncle's house. Ian also explained how he got his car to the cops. First, Ian said he hadn't done any metal work on the car. When he first got the car, it was purple, but he didn't like it, so he painted it yellow. Schweitzer's lawyers thought that Frank Pauline had charged the brothers because their families didn't like each other. In spite of everything, the lawyers kept going. On May 5, 1999, just a few days before some crimes against Dana Ireland were no longer punishable, the cops got what they thought was a big break in the case. Michael Ortiz, who was in jail, gave them the story. He was in the same cell with the Schweitzers before the charges against them were dropped because he helped Gonsalves. Ortiz told the police that Albert Ian Schweitzer told him what he had done. Based on what Ortiz said, Frank Pauline and the Schweitzer brothers were charged again in the Dana Ireland case just 2 weeks later. After this, some people were suspicious of the government and didn't trust them. After all, they got information from a shady source just a few days before the deadline. It seemed too good to be true. The first person to show up in court was Frank Pauline. It was hard to watch the hearing. Pauline claimed that he was not guilty and told the court that he had lied when he said he had killed Dana. Mary Ireland told the court about the first time she heard about what had happened to her daughter. She said that something very bad had happened. Ireland said, "She said there's a bicycle, a shoe, and hair in the road." But the people who said Pauline did the crime were not very reliable. Some people had a lot to gain by putting the blame on others. Gonsalves, Pauline's half-brother, became a witness for the prosecution after Pauline was found guilty. This helped the prosecution. William Chung, who also gave evidence against Pauline, said that Frank admitted to being involved in this crime. But when asked if he saw Frank Pauline in the courtroom, he pointed to someone else even though Pauline was there. Dana Ireland's bike, shorts, top, underwear, and a Jimmy's t-shirt were also found at the spot and shown to the jury. Pauline or the Schweitzer's DNA was not on any of those things. To get around the lack of scientific proof, Deputy Prosecutor Lincoln Ishida claimed that Pauline was the owner of Jimmy's bloody t-shirt. Ishida said at the time, "We're not afraid of that evidence. We welcome it." The defense and the prosecutor can both use the same DNA technology. Pauline's lawyer argued that the t-shirt didn't even fit Frank. Still, the jury decided that Pauline was guilty based on the facts and assumptions that were shown at the trial. Even though forensic proof showed that Pauline's confession was a lie, he was found guilty and given a 180-year sentence. The trial of Albert Ian Schweitzer came next. Even though there was no physical proof, he knew that Frank Pauline had been given a 180-year prison term. So, Schweitzer was surprised when the lawyers told him he could take a deal. But he turned it down and kept saying that he was innocent. The prosecutor said that Schweitzer's Volkswagen Beetle was the car that hit Dana and drove her to a fishing trail, where she was found. All of this happened in spite of a few things. First of all, people saw a pickup truck in the area where they found Dana. Second, Schweitzer's car didn't show any signs that he had anything to do with this case, and Ian didn't become the legal owner of Volkswagen until January 1992. Ian Schweitzer was given a sentence of 130 years in jail in 2000. This was based on the testimony of Michael Ortiz, who said he heard Schweitzer confess, and the supposedly strange fact that his car's bumper had scratches on it. Sean Schweitzer took a plea deal after his older brother was found guilty. He and his family changed their minds and chose not to keep insisting that he was innocent because they were afraid the justice system would fail them again. Sean Schweitzer ended up pleading guilty to the less serious charges of kidnapping and forced denial of life. As part of the deal with the prosecutor's office, Sean Schweitzer had to say that his brother and Frank Pauline killed Dana and take a polygraph test to prove that he was telling the truth when he admitted to the crime and gave the details. The test was given on March 24, 2000, by a polygraph tester from the Office of the State Attorney General. According to the court papers, when Sean Schweitzer took the test, He wasn't telling the truth about what happened. In other words, he lied about what he did when Dana Ireland died. Even though he failed the test, he was still given the chance to take the plea deal. This is why. Lincoln Ishida, who was the deputy prosecutor, told the judge something different. According to court records, Ishida said that Schweitzer did pass the polygraph test because none of the questions Schweitzer answered were false. Sean Schweitzer was given 5 years of probation, with 18 months taken off for time already spent. Sean told Hawaii News Now that the deal with the prosecutor's office was a family choice in an interview he did after he got out of jail. Ian, the brother who got 130 years, later said that he thought it was silly to put both brothers in jail. Ian said that if his parents lost both boys, it would be even more stressful for them and they wouldn't be able to handle it. He agreed with what the family decided and told Sean to do what the lawyer told him to do so he wouldn't have to spend the rest of his life in jail. Sean still feels bad about the deal he made and the testimony he gave against his brother. And as the months and years went by, he and his family also had trouble dealing with the mark this case left on them. I had a lot of bad luck for a long time. Sean Schweitzer said that the man had a hard time finding a job. He also said that people in the town talked about the case for years afterward. John, Dana's dad, died in 2000 at the age of 76. After his daughter died, he began to fight for the rights of people who have been hurt by crime. He also worked to get a rule passed about how long violent crimes can be kept secret. Ian Schweitzer and his family did not accept that he had been wrongly convicted, so they kept fighting. In 2005, Ian Schweitzer asked the Innocence Project to look at his case. In 2010, 5 years later, work on this project started to pick up speed. Lawyers, law students, and professors at the University of Hawaii all looked at old papers that had to do with the Dana Ireland case. Hawaii County's attorneys let them do their jobs. They gave the Innocence Project permission to look over the case to see if the wrong people were found guilty. Year after year went by, but people didn't stop trying to get justice. Mary Louise Crank Ireland, Dana's mother, died on October 10, 2016, at the age of 92. Ian Schweitzer was in jail for a long time, and his parents tried to see him as often as they could. But the visits stopped when he was moved from Saguaro in Eloy, Arizona, to Saguaro in Hawaii.
To Saguaro in Eloy, Arizona. The long flight and the protracted drive from Phoenix were challenging for them, and especially for Linda Schweitzer, who was fighting breast cancer those days. That one time in the Arizona prison, her son said something to her that still stings. He said, "Mom, don't come back, because I don't want to watch you walk away from me again."
23 years after a jury found Albert Ian Schweitzer guilty, his lawyers asked the judge to throw out the verdict because new evidence and information showed that the verdict was wrong. The next day, there was a court session. A few hours after Ian's team filed the request, a state deputy sheriff took Schweitzer from Arizona's Saguaro Correctional Center and accompanied him on several flights to Eloy. They got there before the meeting. The next morning, after a long night at the hotel, his family met at the Eloy courts. They couldn't wait to see Ian Schweitzer, who had just gotten to the island a few hours before. Schweitzer smiled when he walked into the courtroom. His lawyers had given him an Aloha shirt to wear. His lawyers gave the court some new proof. Nancy Din, who is an expert in DNA, was one of the people who spoke in court. They tried everything again, but this time they used more advanced methods that weren't available during the first tests. Din said that the technology got better. It got better in the sense that now we can see things we couldn't see before. In 2000, the police said that there was too much of Dana Ireland's blood on the t-shirt, which was why they did not find any DNA from Frank Pauline or the Schweitzer brothers on it. Scientists who looked at the Innocence Project's evidence, though, used current technology to tell Dana Ireland's DNA. Nancy Din, a DNA expert, stated that the DNA found on the t-shirt and on Dana's body came from the same person. However, this person was neither Frank Pauline nor one of the Schweitzer brothers. After Din spoke, a tire tread expert testified by phone that Schweitzer's Volkswagen could not have left the tracks that were found at both crime scenes. He thought that those tracks were made by a truck, SUV, or van. Adam Freeman, a dentist, was the last person to speak. Ireland had a wound on her left breast that the lawyers first thought was a bite mark from a person, but Freeman said it wasn't a bite mark. He said that the bite marks in this case are a good example of how bad forensic science can be. When the witnesses were done speaking late at night, District Court Judge Peter Kubota made his decision public. Kubota told the court that the new DNA evidence, the tire tread evidence, the bite mark evidence, and Sean Schweitzer's change of mind are all clear proof that a jury would likely find the defendant not guilty if the case were tried again. So, Albert Ian Schweitzer's sentence is now overturned, and Mr. Schweitzer will be freed from jail right away. With those words, Ian Schweitzer was suddenly free 23 years after a jury found him guilty and 25 years after he was jailed. The judge then said some moving things to Ian Schweitzer. "You got 1/3 of your life ahead of you. You can live it being angry and resentful at the process or the people that put you there, or you can live it with a new freedom," Kubota said. "I suggest that since you have your whole family here, you hug and love your family and live a fulfilled life and make the best of the next 1/3 of your life." When Schweitzer was let out of his handcuffs, he first hugged his lawyers and then his family, some of whom he hadn't seen in decades. He held his mother while she cried. Ian's son was in the courtroom, even though he was very young when his father went to jail. They hugged each other. Also, there with a smile and open arms was his younger brother, Sean. After Ian was found not guilty, Sean's lawyer is also trying to get Sean's record cleared. In 2015, Frank Pauline died in a New Mexico jail. Daniel Hood, an inmate who is serving time for killing 2 people, struck Frank Pauline with a rock on April 27, 2015. They were all in the recreation yard at the Southern New Mexico Correctional Facility in Las Cruces. Hood hit Pauline 3 times on the back of the head with the rock. They shared a cell. Hood struck Pauline because he thought he was going to tell on him. Pauline could not be saved by the prison's doctors. His family's lawyer is going to ask for his recovery after he has died. Ian Schweitzer says that it is hard to go from being a prisoner to being a free person. Getting used to life outside of jail is harder than he thought it would be. He says that most of the time he struggles with nervousness. Schweitzer may be able to get money for being wrongfully put in jail. People who have changed their lives can get $50,000 for every year they spent in jail. But the process isn't easy, and his lawyers are working hard to make sure he gets paid. Even though it's been 30 years, the Dana Ireland case is still open. Investigators hope that new ways of checking DNA and tracing family trees will help them find the person who destroyed the Ireland family's life.